Hi guys, good evening everyone. I believe that we are live, so you can quickly let me know if you guys can hear and see me. You can type a quick yes if everything sounds good at your end. Okay, awesome. That means we can start. So today's question was pretty easy, I would say. So the discussion would almost be a breezer. So this was the question: monotonic array. How many of you were able to submit it successfully on your own? You can just say yes if you could code it out on your own. You could? Okay, that's great. Uh, I should say that you must feel very lucky if somebody asks you questions like these in interviews, because it does not really need any sort of optimization. I would say the naive approach itself is the most optimal approach here. Okay, so yeah, just for everyone, if I have to reiterate the question, it says that we will be given an array and the name of the array is nums. It could be array vector, whatever. Now it is monotone increasing if for all I smaller than equal to j, nums of I is smaller than equals to nums of j. So this basically means that I need an array in which an element in the left side, let's say if it is x, should be smaller than or equal to an element in the right side, let's say it is y. So basically x should be smaller than equals to y. Now this property should be valid for every pair of elements x comma I, so that x is the left element and y is the right element in your input array. So if I have to go by this rule, it means that my array should kind of look something like this. Right? So this is a perfectly valid array, because in this you can see that it is monotonically increasing. It never decreases. Yeah, it can have duplicates, but the point is that the values never decrease as you move towards the right side. Okay. Similarly, there is another definition, and that is for monotone decreasing, which is just the reverse of it. So that means as you move from left to right, the elements may be equal or they may decrease, but they will not increase for sure. For example, if you have an array which looks something like that, then I can easily say that yeah, this array is a monotonically decreasing. So basically both of these arrays are of the category of monotonic array. Now the question is that we are given an array and we have to check whether it is monotonic or not. If it is, in that case we wish to return true, otherwise we wish to return false. Correct? So yeah, the most basic approach, the most brute force approach, how would it kind of go? You would say that hey, what I can do is I can first check whether the input array belongs to this category or not, and then I can check whether the input array belongs to that category or not. If it belongs to either of these categories, in that case the answer will be true. Only if it belongs to none of these categories, then the answer will be false. Okay, so what I can do is I can write a separate function to check whether the array is increasing array or not. So let's say this is what we have, a simple function. And now this function here, the aim of this function is to just check whether it is increasing in nature or not. Alright. So what I can do is that I can have a boolean variable called as answer, which is initially true. And now I'll simply iterate. I'll start iterating on this array, and every time what I'll do is I'll compare my current element with the previous element. Okay, so to start with, I can begin my journey from the very first element, which is at index 1, because it has a previous at 0. 0 doesn't have any previous, so I'm going to start iterating from I equals to 1 onwards. till n minus 1, where n is the size, right? And what I'm going to do is, see, I have to check whether the property is of increasing or not. So if I ever find out that my current element, which is nums of I, it happens to be smaller than nums of I minus 1, what does it mean? If my current element was, let's say, smaller than the previous element, it definitely means that my answer should be false, correct? It denotes the fact that the array is not monotonically increasing. So in this case, the answer can be marked as false, and then I can also break out, correct? And then I can just return answer from here. So this is a simple function which verifies whether the passed array is monotonic in nature or not. Now exact same function can be written to check whether it is of decreasing form or not, right? So I can just copy and paste this to produce another function, and I'll call it is decreasing. What will change here? Here the only thing that will change is that if ever I find that my current element is greater than the previous element, let's say if it was greater, then I would say that, hey, it is not of decreasing nature. So the only thing that will change is this sign and nothing else. Everything else will stay constant, correct? Okay, now as I told you that either of these two conditions should be true. So what I can do is I can invoke is increasing method for the array, and then I can invoke is decreasing method for the same array, correct? And I can simply return OR of this, because even if this is true, or let's say that is false, or let's say this is false, that is true, I want to return true, either of these, right? Because of that I have put a logical OR over here. So I can just return this thing as my answer, and I believe my code should work well, right? I think there is some error. We'll need to fix that. Line number 6, where is that? Use of undeclared identifier. Yes, it is undeclared. And this is also undeclared. Now let's try. Oh, we even missed a colon. This one. How about now? Kind of works. Let's submit. Accepted. Okay. You know, just from the perspective of coding this question, somehow this solution is okay. So let's say if you were solving this question as a part of your coding assessment or something, then because it has a very minimal, you can see, order n times complexity, so it would pass. But if this is asked from you by a person, and let's say that person is trying to judge your design skills as well, your clean coding skills as well. So in that case, he might come up with many follow-up questions to it. He may say that, hey, if I look at your code, I can see a lot of redundancy. Guys, just look at it and tell me, don't you think that this function and this function have a lot of code in common? In fact, the entire code is common. This code is exactly same as this code, barring this operator. Only this operator has changed. Everything else is exactly the same, right? Now, what does it mean? It means that if it has been pointed out by your interviewer or someone, then it's your responsibility to fix it. So can you somehow fix it? Can you somehow ensure that I don't need this function? Just with one function I am able to get my job done? One of you is saying we can just use a single loop. Okay, we'll come to that also. We'll come to that point also. But for now, if I have to mend my current code redundancy, what is the best way out? And these things matter. Your code quality matters immensely. We will pass increasing or decreasing operator as a flag. Very good. So that is a great suggestion which has been given by, I think, Aniket. So guys, maybe what we can do is that we'll say that, you know, here we will call this method check, because Now it is no longer just for increasing or just for decreasing. And now along with the array, I'll pass a character variable operator. Operator is a reserved keyword, so let's say op. Okay. Now what I am going to do is I'll call check on my array first for greater than sign and check on my array for smaller than sign. And now because an input is being passed over here, which literally represents the operator greater than or smaller than, so I would need to have some sort of if else conditions, right? So I would say that, hey, you know, if the operator that has been passed is let's say for greater than, okay, greater than operator means that what we need to ensure is that the array is sorted in decreasing order, right? So I would say that if the array is sorted in decreasing order, in that case what we would want to check is that if my nums of I happens to be let's say greater than nums of I minus 1, then I would do this particular thing, correct? Else, in the else case, this thing will come into scene. Guys, if you look at it, my attempt is to just merge the logic of both the functions that you were earlier seeing. And how I have done that? I have done that just by passing an extra variable. Now passing that extra variable has introduced an if else condition, but that's okay because all the other parts of code are still the same. So you can say that if the operator that has been passed by you is greater than, in that case the check that will apply will be the check for decreasing array, correct? And in case of decreasing array, if the current element is greater than a previous element, then the answer should be false and we should break. But if the operator that was passed was this operator, then this check will apply. So let's try our luck, run this code and see what happens. Works. If I submit again works, right? So this is one small improvement that we have made with respect to the last code. Is it clear to everyone that why this version of code is better than the last version of code and how we have dealt with the code redundancy part here? Yeah, cool. Okay. Now, one of you also mentioned a point that, hey, you know, in this particular solution, so this solution is kind of a two-pass solution. Two-pass solution means that we are passing through the array for 2 times. Mind it, you are calling this method twice. You called it once and then you called it second time also. So it's a 2-pass algorithm because you are passing through the array 2 times. Now somebody might ask you that, hey, make it a 1-pass algorithm. It means that I no longer should iterate through the array twice. Only one iteration, and that should somehow get the job done for me. So how many of you can imagine writing a code which does everything in 1 pass? Can you do that? That's not very challenging, but I would say little more challenging than what you otherwise have here. Can you do that? Somebody is saying we can take 2 variables and do that. Okay, okay. No need of op also. Are you talking about this 2-pass solution or 1-pass solution? For now, let's focus on 1-pass solution. Okay. What should be my idea of 1-pass solution? So guys, let's think in this manner. Let's say this is your input array. Okay. So let me tell you what can be the idea over here. So I'll try to give a very simple idea. What we can do is we can just start iterating this array, and while we are iterating, we'll compare our current element with previous element, For the first time, when I see that the current and previous mismatch, then I would check what is the relationship between this and that. Is my current greater or it is smaller? If my current is greater, then I can deem this thing as truth, that hey, this array is of increasing nature, correct? And now I would stick to it. I would go on. If equality is there, I am not worried. I mean, if my current element is same as the previous element, I'm not worried, no issues. But the moment I see that they differ, I would want to make sure that the current is greater. Why? Because at a previous occasion I had noted that this array is increasing array. If ever it happens that the current element is different than previous but is smaller, then in that case I would immediately return an answer of false, saying that hey, this is not a monotonic array. So that's the basic idea, guys. The basic idea is that start iterating on the array. Now, for the first time when you see that the elements differ, your current and previous, you can take note of this fact whether your array is increasing or your array is decreasing. Once you have taken note of this fact, then for every next comparison, you can ensure that. See, while you are comparing, if you see that your both the elements are same, you need not take any step, because both the elements could be same for increasing as well as decreasing array also, right? So in this case, there is no step that is required to be taken, right? But if ever it happens that you had earlier noted an increasing trend, but now you are seeing a decreasing trend, then you can return an answer of false. So this can be the simple idea. Does it make some sense? How many of you feel that you guys can code it? You can? That's awesome. So let's quickly write the code. See, as I spoke, what I'll do is I'll keep two flags with me. Is increasing, initially -1, is decreasing, initially -1. You can have Boolean variables also, it's up to you. Okay. When both of them are -1, it means that I do not know the nature of my array till this point of time. Because see, if let's say you had 1, 1, 1, 1, and if you have scanned this much part of the array, could you conclude whether your array is increasing or decreasing? Could you conclude? The answer is no, right? You will be able to make a conclusion only when this comparison happens, correct? So what I'm going to do is that apart from these two, I'm going to have a Boolean variable, which is my answer, and this answer is initially true, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to iterate on my array from index 1 till the last index. Okay. Cool. Next. Here. Tell me what should I do? If my current element is same as the previous element, can I make any deduction? The answer is no. Because I can't make any deduction, so I should simply continue to the next iteration of the for loop. This is what I have written. Okay. Otherwise, what to do? See, if this condition was not true, that means that your values are differing. Your current and previous values are differing. Now, if your current and previous values are differing, there can be two cases. The first case is that your increasing and decreasing flags are still equal to -1. If they are still equals to -1, that means, hey, this is the first such pair which will help you decide whether your array is of increasing trend or decreasing trend. So guys, you know what I am going to do? I am going to say that, hey, if at this juncture I find that is increasing is also -1, and along with that is decreasing is also -1. If both of them are -1, in that case what I am going to do is I am going to set one of those depending on whether this is smaller than that or this is larger than that. and it can be coded pretty easily. I can simply say that, hey, if my nums of I, the current number, is greater than nums of I minus 1. If this is the case, then what should be set? This should be set. So I can set this thing from minus 1 to 1. Correct? In the else case, what should be set? Else case means that your current number was actually smaller than the previous number. So in that case, is decreasing flag should be set to 1. Correct? So this is what we have, right? Now we need to write an else condition for this, because think of it in this manner. If at the first juncture you have changed is inc or is dec, that means now for no other iteration this condition is going to be true, right? So now when you move on to some other pair, which is this or that, you need to compare them and you need to verify whether their comparison is going ahead with your trend or not. So what is the trend? If you see that is inc was marked to be 1, and on top of that you found out that your current number is smaller than the previous number. What does it mean? It means that the trend is being violated, because earlier you had noted that the array is increasing, but now you are noting that, hey, it's showing a decreasing trend. The current number is smaller than the previous number. So in this case, what we are going to do is we are simply going to say that, hey, the answer should be made false and the loop should be broken. Correct? Now I can put one more check. I'll call it an else if check. Here, if I see that isDec is 1. If isDec is 1, that means that the array had shown a decreasing trend in the beginning. And on top of that, if we note that the current trend is of increasing, then it's problematic. Then it means that the answer should be turned to false and the loop must be broken. That's it. The job is done. So by the time you break out of this loop, you will have your answer and you can return that answer. Now I can just run this code. Works, and then I can submit it. Works. And you can see that this is a little faster, maybe, not sure, little faster. Hardly makes a difference, because the asymptotic complexity continues to be order of n only. And there won't be much significant differences in constant terms also. So yeah, this was about it. Is it clear how many of you have been able to understand this one pass logic? You can just say yes or no if you could relate with the code. Super easy, right? Okay. So these were, I mean, if somebody asks you this such kind of easy question in interview, then these are the different variations which he or she might want to make you implement, and you should be able to do that. Now, you know, the interviewer can go on to different extents. He might change this question completely. He might say, and this is going to be homework for you, okay? All of you should, when you go back, make sure you try this out. So now I am going to say that, hey, I have to check whether my array has 2 tones inside it or not. So by 2 tone, I mean that initially increasing and then decreasing. So this kind of array is an acceptable array and you should return true to it, because you can see that it is initially increasing and after that it is decreasing. You can note it, right? Okay. Also, such kind of array is also valid, which is initially decreasing. So let's say it decreases and then it increases. So such kind of array is also acceptable. So you should be returning true for this also, and you should be returning true for this also. So you understand the meaning of 2 tones, that first increases, then decreases, or vice versa, which is first decreases and then increases. Now let me tell you one thing. One of the tones may be empty. So what I mean by that is, it may happen that you have an array in which there is only one tone. In that case, I can say that, yeah, the second tone is there, but it is empty. So for that also I want to return true. Similarly, for such kind of array also we want to return true, in which there is only one tone which is decreasing. So basically these examples are back to the examples of this code. So for all the arrays for which my current code is returning true, your next code should also return true, but it should also accommodate the arrays that have two tones in them. Is this question clear to all? How many of you are able to understand the problem statement, and how is it different than this Leetcode problem? Right? So your interview might give a follow-up question like this to you. Now, do you feel confident enough that you will be able to code it? Forget about one pass. Can you code this problem in 2 pass? How many guys can code it in 2 pass? Okay, and how many guys feel super confident about coding it in 1 pass? You must try. This continues to be in easy category only, okay? So whatever homework I am giving you, it continues to be in easy category. Even if you are a beginner or you are at mediocre level, I would say try it out. It will be a good exercise for you, okay? Great, awesome. So that's it that I had to discuss today. Now, I think in today's section's description, it said that it's also a Q&A. So you guys are free to ask questions. If there is anything that you guys wish to ask me in general, anything related to coding, DSA, interviews or development, anything, you guys can ask. We can have Q&A for another few minutes or so, and then we can choose to end. You can just put in your questions in the chat. I'll read and then I'll answer. Rachita asking, can calculate total number of times using counter. Yeah, he's suggesting a solution. Vivek is saying, sir, give more example of 2 tones. I'll give you a generic example. 2 tones means nothing. It means there is an array which has an increasing part, okay, and then has a decreasing part. That's it. Or it could be vice versa also, which is first it has a decreasing part and then has an increasing part. Okay. And now it can also happen that one of these parts do not exist. So let's say decreasing part does not exist. So such kind of array is also acceptable. Similarly, if increasing part also does not exist, such kind of array should also be acceptable. Yeah. Somebody asking, is CP important for interviews? CP, competitive programming. See, it's something that if you are passionate about, if you enjoy doing it without stress, and if that's something that gives you a sense of gratification, you should do it, because it hones your problem solving skill for sure. But I would say in order to crack interviews, it's not a must. Even if you have the required amount of depth in DSA, you will be able to crack interviews. Usually what happens is that people do not chase depth. They simply chase some hand-picked questions that, hey, I just want to do these questions that are recommended here or there. In that case, they lack depth, right? But on the other hand, if you don't see an algorithm just as an algorithm, look at an algorithm as if it is a set of mathematical steps which takes you from some state, some initial state to some final state. Now, if you look at it in this manner, then you will also chase the proof of correctness behind that algorithm. You'd want to check why this algorithm works, why something else does not work. For example, lot many greedy algorithms are there, right? There are so many problems like activity selection and all. And greedy algorithms are very easy to understand and code, but very, very easy to prove their correctness. Now, when you think about that, a lot of edge cases, a lot of test cases will come to your mind, and then you will start thinking logically. Then your thought process will shape up, and then you will take that leap which is required from a mediocre problem solver to a next level problem solver. So I would say it's not about doing a lot of CP and knowing a lot of fancy data structures and algorithms. It's about knowing things in depth. If you understand recursion, you understand recursion in extreme depth. Recursion should feel to you, because what is it? It's nothing, it's just a brute force. It should feel to you as if it's brute force. So that should be the mentality. Do not take shortcuts. Do not look out for quick means and ways to achieve things. Yeah. Okay. I have 3 years of experience currently as a front-end developer, but I am learning DSA too, so I am confused regarding the path as people suggest to do DSA and backend, so it feels like my DSA and dev learnings do not sync. You know, what I would tell you is that it's very, very important for you to feel fearless about DSA, because as a regular software developer, when you are dealing with things, when you are dealing with systems, then it's not these simple edge cases that comes into picture. I mean, the industry level edge cases could be much more notorious. There could be systemic things that are going wrong. You might have to debug your code, and you might also have to take a look at your dependencies and all such sorts of things. So somebody who is a good problem solver, he kind of has much more resilience in doing these things, much more resilience in undertaking these tasks. So I would say that DSA is important from this perspective. Now, do not overdo something, because yes, there are a lot of people who just do DSA and do not do other things. So that is the reason companies have changed their hiring trends a bit. There are a lot of companies who now ask design questions. And if you are an SDE one with some years of experience, or for some companies, even if you are a fresher, they'll ask you low-level design questions. They'll ask you some puzzle, not puzzle, let me not call it puzzle. They'll ask you a coding question which involves launching multiple threads. They would want to check whether you have an idea of that or not. And if you have built a project, they might want to understand whether you have a fair enough idea of the underlying framework or not. So all these things matter. So there should be a balance for sure. DSA gives you resilience of learning other things. So instead of just doing DSA, it's much more important to spawn yourself in other domains as well. Okay? Yeah, that is what I would say. Eligible for SD2. See, different companies have a different criteria for SD2. Usually, if you are giving SD2 interviews, design round is a must. On top of DSA, they'll ask you questions from low-level design as well as high-level design. So high-level design is something which is more systemic in nature. They'll give you a very, very open-ended question, and you will have to think about the architecture of the system. You'll have to talk about, you'll have to ask a lot of questions from the interviewer, gain an idea of the scale that is required, and based on that, choose the right components that fit your needs. On the other hand, in case of low-level design, it's much more coding-centric. So there, you actually have to implement whatever you mean. So you can't just draw the boxes and leave things as it is. Usually what people do is that they start thinking in terms of domain models. They start thinking in terms of, the domain objects, and that's it. And then they basically find it hard to weave the classes and entities together in order to come up with a fully running top to bottom system. But I would say that's not right. It requires a very different. So I would say the learning curve of low-level design and learning curve of DSA are very, very different. Low-level design requires much more common sense skills and much more, I would say, understanding of how clean code should be written, because low level design is not about improving the performance of systems in general. Rather, it is about improving the extensibility of new features inside your existing code base and readability of the code that you have written. Because if you are in an industry and if you are writing code, who do you write code for? I've made a video on this, by the way, but let me ask this question from you guys. Who do you write code for? What do you think? Are your customers going to read your code? No. Let's say you are working in an e-commerce company. Your customers are not going to read your code. How about your CEOs, COOs? Are they going to read your code? No. Who are going to read your code? Your team members, your teammates. Now, if you have written a piece of code which takes them 1 week to just understand that what is the state of the art, then that's a pathetic thing, I would say. But on the other hand, you are writing a piece of code which feels like a prose or poetry to them. I mean, they can just look at it and understand that, yeah, this is what it is doing. Then that's great. So the first requirement of low-level design is that the readability should be high. Now, if you look at my solution, whatever code I have written, maybe the first code that I just wrote here, I would say that this code has a good readability, because anyone who is reading this code just by looking at this line will understand that, hey, what is the intent, right? So clean code is something which improves developer productivity. And if it improves developer productivity, then the developer will be easily able to understand that what is the state of the art, and he will also be easily able to change. Usually, if you see a code base and somebody asks you to introduce a new feature, then if you are asked to introduce a new feature, you will do some other kind of code change. If I am asked to do it, I will do some other kind of code change. If somebody else is asked, he will do some other sort of code change. But is there a way that the code could be such that everyone does the same sort of code change? For example, maybe just introducing a new class against an existing interface, and that's it. And the code reviewer would also know that, yeah, this is the change that should come. If anything different than that comes, that means design principles are going to be violated. So, having a good low-level design is extremely good for the developer productivity, and I would say the developers' happiness levels also, because they will be much lesser stressed reading the code and building the new features. So it's important, it's super important. If you're targeting for SD2 roles and all, this skill is super important, which you must invest on. Yeah. Does that make sense, whatever I have spoken about so far? Not sure if you guys could relate with me on that. Currently I am doing internship in non-tech role, but I want to quit it, but due to college pressure I can't, and I'm in 4th year. Yeah, see, I would say it's a very good idea to know the nature of internships before venturing into internships. If you're from a tech background, then doing internship in non-tech background might not be that helpful. Okay, you should look out. See, first of all, I would say that if you are a fresher, then give up this mentality of I'll not do front end, I'll not do back end, I'll not do this, I'll not do that. No. Problem solving aspect is there in front end also, let me tell you that. Okay, so don't think like that. Just go ahead and learn things. And see, you cannot understand a system entirely if you do not have the understanding of front end, back end, all the other middle tier things as well as database. You need to have high level understanding of everything. So rather than trying to be a specialist in something, that hey, I'll be a specialist in backend, I'll only do backend because I'm a CP guy, I would say try to be generalist. Get general feel, general look and feel of everything. That will be much better for you. because then you will be able to understand system as a whole. Okay, so I would say look out for, if you're looking out for internships, look out for the ones that that fall in tech, and do not be biased towards front end or back end, anything like that. I know many people who are great problem solvers, and at the same time they love doing front end, and they have designed very robust front ends which does not break on different browsers and different devices. Yeah. The purpose of learning should be, at Programming Pathshala we say the purpose of learning should be to become a rock star software developer, not just crack interviews. If you learn from the intention where you, like let's say this particular thing only, where we meet every night and we solve problems, if you take it as a lifestyle thing which you enjoy doing, then your learning will compound like anything. But if you take it like something that, hey, this is a deadline that I have to meet and I have to do it for continuous these many days for cracking interviews, then it might happen that when your streak breaks, you might not feel like coming back. Okay, so have a mentality that if you are a software developer, if you are envisioning a long-term career in software development, all these things should be something that brings a smile on your face, that no need to compete with somebody else, I would say, because the chief source of stress is competing with someone else. I would say even if you compete with yourself every day, if you just compete with yourself every day, you will be able to release much more shining version of yourself. Okay, because then you will work on your lacuna, whatever are the missing strings inside you. So sit with yourself and figure out what is it that I am not so good at. Am I already very good at DSA and am I lacking other skills? Or is it that I think I am good at DSA but I am only able to solve certain questions that I have already solved? If that is the case, you need to work on DSA. You need to understand it in depth. So that should be the intent of learning, I would say. Yeah. Okay guys, great. It was a very easy question today, so we were able to wrap it off very quickly. I don't know what kind of question is going to come tomorrow. Tomorrow again, we'll have this discussion coming, and make sure you come back. Make sure you solve my homework. Do you guys remember my homework? What was the homework? The homework was to code for this question, where there are two tones inside the array, 2 pass as well as 1 pass. So do it before you sleep tonight. Okay, and we'll meet again tomorrow. Bye everyone and good night.